and welcome to Voice of Mother Earth, the podcast channel of Health of Mother Earth Foundation. My name is Kome Odomo.
Upondobasi.
And this series of debunking climate myths. And today's topic, we will be looking at intergenerational dialogue for climate action. Why and how? And with us in the studio is Praise Edore, a student of University of Benin, studying health, safety and environment. And also Oluwatomisin Emmanuel, a graduate from the Department of Chemistry from the University of Africa. So today we're looking at intergenerational dialogue for climate action, how and why. We're concerned about how climate justice can be achieved, and we want to know what the younger generation think about this. And we're going to go straight into this conversation. And the very first question will be directed to Oluwatomisin. We want to know what you have heard so far, the discussion on the initial thoughts about the feeling on intergenerational dialogue as regards climate action.
Thank you for that question. I remember when I was in 300 level, my first IT, because as a chemistry student, I actually said I should go to an environmental lab. So the environmental lab, it was concerned with going to these oil companies to check the environment, like test the soil around, test the water around, take some fishes and then test the fishes to see what the kind of chemicals, the kind of toxic things in them. So speaking with our managing director, then we got to realize they had to do those things to ensure the safety of the people living around those societies. And in the long run, though I felt to an extent it was not effective, because because indirectly they were staffs of, or they were employees of these oil companies. So they had to, I think to an extent, they had to give them what they wanted to get, at least what would make the oil companies look good. I remember some field trips going to Panocean in Nogara, Delta State. We caught some fishes, we tested the soil, we saw that the toxic things in the soil were like more than the normal or the expected level of what should be in the soil and water. But then at the end of the day, nothing was going to be done about it. You get me? So that we spoke with our general manager then. He made us understand why they were doing those things. But to the best of my own knowledge, it was not effective enough. That's the only experience I can remember. I was speaking with someone who has been in this thing before I came into it. That's my experience of it. Thank you.
So Praise, would you like to share yours?
I don't particularly have a lot of experiences with intergenerational dialogue, especially as regards climate change. However, while I was still in, I think, GS2, I came across an essay writing textbook, and I stumbled upon this piece on how our ozone layer was getting depleted and the consequences of these actions. I remember I was very excited about this because there are these articles about how our ozone layer is so wonderful and how it protects us and the environment. And I felt it was in danger, and as a kid, I started telling almost everyone I knew, and I talked to my mom about it, and I talked to some teachers. And I remember that it wasn't really taken very well. They were excited that, okay, you are doing something, it was cute or adorable, but it wasn't really taken very seriously, because I guess because of the generational gap, they weren't really taking the words of that kid seriously when it came to climate change.
All right, thank you very much for sharing your experiences. So, like I said, because of the gap, you feel that's why you were not responded to in a positive manner. So I want to ask, is there a positive experience that you've had or you've witnessed, as in both the older generation and the younger generation, doing something, to promote climate justice or to tackle climate change?
Well, yes, I've definitely seen something like that, even though not personally experienced it. I have seen a lot of youth initiatives taken up by Home F, and I also remember that there was this girl who was very popular on the internet for speaking up about climate issues. And she was able to speak to even presidents and people in power and authority, and it was cast around the news. Different people, young, old, they all listened to her, and it was very positive. It was received well.
Right. So missing.
When I was in NYC camp, there was this debate we did concerning climate justice, climate change.
Are you serious?
Yeah, we did it in camp NYC. It's an NGO. They came around then. So they came to NYC camp, we did it. I was part of the people that actually represented my platoon, the two of us.
Well, platoon 8.
Eight,
Wow, okay. That was a wild guess.
Yeah, it was platoon 8. And at least to a very large extent, it's like, it was a platform to educate younger Nigerians. You get me? Because in our NYC camp, I think we were about 1,500 of us. So you're talking about 1,500 youths getting exposed to stuff like that, to topics like that. And like she said, I think her name is Greta Thunberg or something. So people like that. Also, this Orange group in Netherlands, I'm very fond of them with the kind of things they do. Going to all these places to make known what they think about what all these big corporations in quote are doing to our earth in general. So that's my.
Okay, so from what you did in camp, was there any linkage between what the older generation have been doing? You said yourself that they brought this to the camp. Did they explain what the older generation have done to solve issues?
Sorry, just to chip in. Maybe before then, if you can tell us, do you think the old generation has failed us in tackling this issue, or do you think they have done their best and it's just going to be bigger before going on? So
okay, when they came to camp, it was the people that spoke with us. I think they've been in the struggle, they've been in the fight for a while, but they didn't really tell us about the experiences over time. You know what I mean? So it was more like trying to cause a stir up in the youth, like, okay, you need to take this thing serious, or you need to take this thing seriously, because even if not for yourself, for generations to come. But with regards to answering your question, I think it's a bit nuanced. It's like it's not white and black. There are gray areas, and I think in the best, in my own opinion, I think they tried, but is it enough? With the older generations, they've tried, but is it enough? Because with the limited information then that they had, and the limited access to spreading information, not like what we do have nowadays with our social media, with the internet and everything, where like there was a book I was reading yesterday on power, and how it's like power is getting decentralized. The powerful are becoming less powerful, and then it's like power is spreading. So with the inception of the internet, with the inception of social media everywhere, you see that, okay, a guy can just come up tomorrow, create a community of like-minded individuals. A young guy, just like that, before you know, he's having an army of social climate activists or climate activists everywhere. Stirring up conversations, going to hurt these big corporations, like where it actually hurts them. You get me? So I think they did well with what they had. Yeah, they did well with what they had. So it's left for the new generation to like take the baton and run with it.
Okay, so do you want to respond also?
It does feel sometimes like they had planted the seeds of what we are reaping now with global warming, and it does feel that way most of the time.
So you're invariably saying the older generation planted a negative seed that is affecting us presently?
Yes.
Okay, so then I would ask now, what wrong do you think they planted, the older generation? What's the wrong thing you do?
I think especially with the age of industrialization and the fact that they are mostly the ones in power to be making the policies, and that it hasn't really been geared towards tackling the climate issues as much as it should be.
Okay, please go ahead.
Quickly.
Okay, like she said, yeah, I was the Industrial Revolution. During that generation, I think most of the problem we have nowadays came from that generation, came from then, and even after then, not a lot has been done to like curtail or like to reduce the effect of what has happened then over time. But still, with regards to our like, I think it was more from a place of ignorance.
So are you generalizing that every older generation, every person in the older generation really did this to hurt the planet? I'm sure that there are some that are really fighting for the planet, fighting to save the planet.
Yes, but I think enough.
I think if I'm not wrong, I think she's saying that they failed us, but you're saying that they did their best. Basically, if I'm not wrong.
It depends on the generation.
Yes.
We are talking about like generation of our parents directly, like the 60s, people in their 60s and maybe 50s.
Above,
Okay. To an extent, I think they could have done better. But when they're talking about people in their like our grandfathers, and I think it was from a place of ignorance. Maybe they didn't know what they were doing or contributing to like the detriment of our society, of our planet generally. But that's why I said, with our parents' generation, some of them knew, but were they enough to have instigated a change, to have caused a thing that would be enough, measurable? You get me? It's not just one person in a million doing something, but like 1,000 at least, stirring up people. So that's what I think.
Alright, so now I'm going to flip it a bit.
Okay.
Now, the youths, as of now, do you think we are doing well on that front, or do you think we are disappointing? Or do you think we'll do better with the trajectory we're going, or do you think we'll even do worse?
I think we are going to do worse.
Why?
With climate change, with parenting, with everything, we have access to information now more than any generation. I believe life is easier for us in our generation more than any generation, more than it has ever been on planet Earth. But still, it has caused laziness in the youth, most especially. Another thing is, I don't think people are aware of the effects of global warming, of everything associated with climate change, to talk enough, to come up with solutions, to do things, especially as youth. Let's, for example, look at what happened in Kenya over the past few weeks or so. The youth decided, these policies you guys are bringing, these things you guys are bringing, because they understood the effect of the policies they were bringing. They came up with, and they changed this. They got the result they wanted. Though I understand with the help of democracy being respected, because somehow we tried that a couple of years ago. We know the result, but at least they got what they wanted from the result. We saw, if youth decide to actually do something, they'll get
Things
it done.
will happen.
Exactly, things will happen. But then the thing is, are they informed enough? And then even those that are informed, do they know the effect? Do they know, okay, if this happens and that happens, this should be the result? Especially with regards to climate change, do they know? Are they well informed? You get me? And then, even if they are well informed, what are the means to bring forth their voices? Where is the platform for their voices to be heard? That's my.
I do believe that youths already have platforms for their voices to be heard, because now more than ever, the world is like a global village. And I think with older generations, the disadvantage is that even if the older generations were more informed, it takes more time for a culture of echo culture to become widespread with older generations. But with youths, with the technology online, even with TikTok alone and other social media platforms, you see that when little things are raised, such as wars in so and so places, the youths are riled up and they start dishing out different cultures, different ways to engage immediately. So I do believe that the youths can and do have a lot of power in regards to that, and they do have a platform for their voices to be heard, just like that girl Greta Thunberg. So there are a lot of youths like that. I'm not going to say that the older generation did not do anything concerning environmental activism, especially in regards to climate change. But I will say that with the technological advancement and with how evolved our newer and present generations are, we are much more well equipped to make a bigger change in tackling these issues.
Right. Very interesting. Thank you. So, so just in a nutshell, what's your prediction? Do you think we'll do better with where we're going right now and the things you mentioned, or do you think we'll actually do worse?
And then just to add, how would you bridge the gap? Since you've seen the mistakes they make, you said they have been ignorant to do these things, and now he's saying, can you do better? So how do you bridge the gap from the older generation and the younger generation?
Well, first of all, I do predict that we can get better. There's a lot of room to improve, but the only way to improve is by communication, like you said, and we do have the ways and the platforms to do so now and to do that at a quicker pace. And as regards the second question on how to bridge the gap, the intergenerational gap, I think what needs to happen is more of an awareness that we need to work together for things to be done effectively. When we are having intergenerational dialogue, there's usually some sort of discrimination between the age gaps, perhaps ageism for the older generation, and the younger generation is seen as inexperienced. But in reality, the older generation has the connections within smaller communities to be able to make these changes in policies and in lifestyles that can that can play a big part in tackling with the climate change. And I also believe that youths, we have the access to technology and can continue improving on opting for more innovative ways to get things done that would not contribute to the depletion of our ozone layer and causing more problems for our climate.
Okay. Prediction. I think, like I said the other time, it's nuanced. Remember everything happening right now, I don't think we get any better than our parents. But if something can be done, somehow, tides can turn, tides can change, then we'll do better because we have better reach. In fact, there are more people and there are more youth on earth right now. Now, with bridging the gap, I believe one of the ways we can make this thing interesting, let me use an organization that has done it well as an example, PETA, with animals and trying to make people stop eating meat, do this, and recruit more vegetarians. One way they have tackled that situation well, I think, has been through people's emotions. They speak to your emotions. They create videos that make you question like your ethics, your morals, and everything about you. You hear me? And these videos, it's like it's like forming an army. They get more recruitment by the day, if it's by the hour. It's better. More people are turning to vegetarians and stuff like that. Just because if people speak to people's emotions, those organizations speak to people's emotions. I think that's one of the way we can do it in this generation. Create videos, like speak to people's emotions. If you expect everybody to be logical, you're deceiving yourself. You're deceiving yourself. You'll be surprised at how I don't know if I can use the word can be, especially when it comes to something like this that is not interesting enough for them.
No comments.
when it comes to stuff like this, because it's not something. Let's not deceive ourselves. It's not something that is interesting to most people. You get me? So you have to find the way that is to make it interesting, and then it speaks to people's emotion. Let people know we are killing this our earth. You get me? We are killing this our planet, and if something is not done soon, not in the next 100 years, not in the next 50 years, now, if something is not done now, to start, it's marginal gain, marginal increase. You reduce some stuff, the planet heals. So it's just like that. Another thing is, I think, gathering with or talking with, listening to people that have been in this fight for long. where you gather their knowledge with the energy you have as a youth. You combine both, you work with it. For example, I don't expect my father to walk 2 miles or 3 miles right now, so we are going to start a protest. I don't expect my father to be as energetic as I am. But if I see someone who has been in this fight for like 20 plus 30 years, with the experience they've gathered and everything, bring everything, look for a way to like make us mingle. They've been to places we cannot dream of. People that have been in this fight for a while. You get me? And if you can, take us to these places, teach us ways, things you did well, things you did wrong. Let's look for ways to like right those wrongs. I think yeah, we are starting. That's the starting point.
So I can categorically say here and now that we're going to make your wish come through by bringing someone who has worn the shoes for decades, who has fought for justice when it comes to environmental issues. You've been listening to Voice of Mother Earth, the podcast channel of Health of Mother Earth Foundation. I am Kome Odomo, and with me is my co-host,
Bonubasi.
And we've been talking about debunking climate myth. Just before we went off, Olua Tomisin, who is one of our guests here, said he would love to sit in the same space with an environmental legend who has walked the path so he could learn. He said he doesn't imagine his father going on protests. But at this point, we want to invite to this session an environmentalist who has gone for protests virtually all his life, who knows in and out of the environmental space. We'll be introducing our next guest, who is an expert on this issue. He's none other than Dr. Nimo Basi, the Executive Director of Health of Mother Earth Foundation. He is an environmentalist, an architect, and a lover of the environment. Please welcome Dr. Nimo Basi. You're welcome back, and you've been listening to Voice of Mother Earth. Before we went on the break to invite our guest, another guest to this episode, we left off where Tomisin requested that he could be joined by an expert, and we've been joined by Nimo Basi, the Executive Director of HOMEF. Over to you, sir. You've been listening to the conversations in the background, and I'm sure that you have seen the minds of the youth, how they are energetic and interested to know about things concerning the environment. You've seen their point of view, how they feel that the older generation has failed to preserve the environment. We really would like to hear from you what you think your generation has done wrong and how it can be repaired.
Wow, that's a huge question. But let me preface my answer by saying that every generation fails. But more importantly, for individuals in each generation, we have a duty to realize what is going on and do something about it. Going back in history or going back in time, obviously things could have been done differently. But we've got many forces that have been at play that has pushed humanity to behave in a certain way, in a way that is extremely exploitative. Way back in history, the human race was a very, very cooperative set of people. Like you said, human beings are social beings. But over the ages, we've seen people more interested in amassing profit, amassing power, controlling, exploiting. And the exploitation has gone beyond exploiting humans to exploiting nature herself. And I think it's this kind of mindset that has given birth to the crisis that we're facing now. The crisis we're facing in today's world is complex and has multiple formats. Economic conflict, economic challenges, social challenges, political challenges, environmental challenges. Everywhere you look, there's a crisis, but they're all interconnected. And the conversation you have on climate change is very important in bringing this crisis all together.
Right. Thank you very much for sharing those points. Right now, we'll be talking about both the older generation and the younger generation. In your experience, well, two things. I'd like to know maybe your highlights of experiences that you've had in the struggle for climate justice, and also your experiences in which you've seen a fusion between both the older generation and the younger generation, and something positive came out of that experience.
Absolutely. We need to have more of coming together of the younger and the older generation, because we have different energy levels, we have different ideas, different experiences, and we, like they say, the old broom knows the corner. So we know in today's world, the efforts to solve the climate crisis is both on the street and on the conference tables. Now, the elders have been occupying the conference tables, but the power at the grassroots, on the floor, on the street, is held by younger generation. And so you need to bring a situation where the street, actually, I feel personally, the street should be the point of decision about what happens in the conference halls, because some people in the conference halls are completely out of touch. Recently, I was looking at old Nigerian newspapers that were published where we didn't have, nothing, internet wasn't a common thing. So you have hard copies. And look at the struggle against military dictatorship in Nigeria. It was led by mostly young people. And, why would young people do this so successfully? Because young people are very, they have very strong ideas, strong opinions, and they are less careful about, or less selfish about what will happen to them. They're more ready to sacrifice everything to get, they're more idealistic. That's what I was looking for. Young people have great ideals that must be harnessed to solve the crisis that we're confronting with. When I began my life as an activist, as a human rights activist, so that was a bit different from climate campaigning. But the climate justice is a human rights issue. But when we started seeing the kind of distortion going on in the environment, to find that it's no longer about one person's human rights, it's about collective rights. And climate injustice inflicts collective injustices to our people. So yes, where would this all come together? Today, in today's world, we've seen young people have risen up with very strong voices when it comes to climate justice campaigns. And they've shifted the needle in the right direction, because the elders have seen that they can't really continue with abstract ideas, fictional solutions, and all the false solutions, which is what is populating the climate discussion today. So young people are the ones who will stand a good chance, because they actually have more stake than the elders. The elders, the very first COP I attended, young people were wearing T-shirts asking the elders, how old will you be in 50 years? And most of those elders, they will make 50 more years. They already lived their life. They're just on the way out. So, but young people have the future to contend with, and that is why their voices are so critical.
All right. Thank you very much. Like you just mentioned, like an example, gathering like the COP. There have been so many COPs, and yet the results have been the same. We have not seen anything tangible. So now that you're suggested that youths, they should not get tired, they should get a little more involved. What strategies can we imbibe in order to actually see a change, and that we don't just go on another 20, 30 years still fighting for this same thing? Like Nigeria government, when they shifted, the goalposts to stop gas flaring. This year they'll say we'll stop this year. When it's close, they'll say no. 2020 is close again, 2050. So what is the solution you would give to young people?
There are many things I could suggest. One is that young people must be involved in politics, and not just in terms of sloganeering, said not too young to run, and then nothing happens after that. We really need young people to be on the table for the decision making. Otherwise, you're still going to have the same old game. The Conference of Parties by the United Nations has actually been giving weaker solutions every year. So rather than getting more strict and more focused on bringing real solutions, we're seeing the ascendancy of false solutions. This is what I believe, but with knowledge, young people can debunk those solutions. To focus on debunking the false solutions and calling out policymakers and governments about those things they clap themselves about that they've achieved, and that they've achieved something at each COP. I think that is very critical. One is to acquire the knowledge, one is to expose the falsehood, and then to show how dire the situation would be in the future. We have to, when we look at 20, like you said, net zero, the countries have said they're going to achieve net zero by 2040, 2050, 2060, 2070. Nigeria has claimed they will achieve net zero by 2060, and yet we're still having all the crazy things happening in the oil fields, and there's no real clear-cut climate policy. So young people need to call out all these kind of structures. And look, what you are doing is compounding the problem. We need real solutions. I didn't offer the real solutions. There are solutions. There are things that can be done that will immediately begin to change the system. Although there are many challenges, I would say, especially for us in Africa. When you talk about industrial revolution, talk about the level of development in the global north versus what is happening in the global south. But young people have to learn to ask the right question. It's not about catching up. You don't want to catch up. The world does not have enough resources to replicate a failed system. We have to agree the system has failed. So now we should be asking, what are the alternative development, what are the alternatives to development? Young people have to critically question every single concept. Not one concept that the president or anybody brings up should be allowed to go without close examination. And if we do this, I'm sure we can now bring out the building blocks to make the change that we want.
So I'll quickly ask one. It should be a last question from me. You said something about
for today, I hope.
Not for
last question for today.
Well, maybe for today, but then
not forever.
Not forever. Yeah. So you said something that caught my attention. You said using old brooms. The old broom knows the corner. Now, before you joined us, we've been talking about bridging the gap between the younger generation. And now you also said something about false solution. And I'm very sure that the youths are running with this solution, not knowing that they are false. For the sake of the youths who are listening to us, we would like that you explicitly tell us what these false solutions are and how you can also bridge the gap between your generation and the younger generation.
Well, let me start from bridging the gap. It's got to be a situation where both generations learn to listen to one another. And in Health of Motherhood Foundation, that's one thing we try to do through learning from the wise. We'll have young people sitting down with the elders and just listening to them and learning from, asking questions. As young people may have wrong ideas, so the elders also have wrong ideas. Because when you've done the same thing for a long time, you may tend to think that that thing is correct and you can fight for it, whereas it may be fundamentally wrong. This is why we have to all be ready to listen and to learn from one another. And as I said earlier, we have to recognize the fact that we have different energy levels. And it's by coming together we can really have synergy that works. The older generation cannot go it alone. And the younger generation would benefit from going with older people, those who have been in the struggle for a long time. Because, activism succeeds most when you build relationships. And this relationship could be with individuals, could also be with communities. Alone, you're never going to go far. That's what Mandela said. Or the African proverb, if you want to go far, you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with somebody. So we need the collective. And that should be the mindset. Now, the false solutions, over the years, the climate debate has gone from demanding that those who have created the problem should do to solve the problem, which means those who took up the carbon budget. Carbon budget is about how much carbon can you put in the atmosphere that the world would not be set on fire. Now we believe that between 80 to 90% of the budget has been exhausted. So the debate is, how do you manage the 10% before we go over into the crazy situation where things are no longer controllable? Now, up to a point, that was up to 2009, when COP15, number 15 Conference of Parties took place, there was still a chance that the polluting nations can be held to account. But from that moment, everything became voluntary. And young people should not accept a voluntary climate regime where nations do whatever they feel is convenient. When nations are allowed to do what they feel is convenient, of course, they're going to do what is convenient. So the hard questions will not be asked and the difficult action will not be taken. And so to make it possible to carry on and feel good that the countries are doing something, they set up issues like the nationally determined contributions. When that idea first came up before it was adopted, it was called intentionally nationally determined contribution. So they intentionally showed that it was just an intention, but they removed that word and now left it as nationally determined contributions. And countries have said, okay, this is what we're going to do to achieve net zero. This is what we're going to do in the next 5 years. And so every 5 years, countries will meet to compare notes and say, what you say you're going to do? How far have you gone? And of course, they can do all they said they're going to do, and the world will still be on fire. Because what they've said they're going to do is not going to solve the problem. Depending on fossil fuels, burning petrol, burning diesel, burning gas is going to burn the planet. That is exactly what it means. And so the four solutions that come is carbon trading, carbon offsetting. So somebody sits down in, say, Europe, continues to pollute, and then buys up or secures some carbon in trees in Africa. And then when you say, okay, you said you're going to achieve net zero, you say, well, I've achieved net zero. The carbon absorbed in the tree in Africa is equivalent or more than the carbon I'm emitting in Europe. So you continue to emit and you have a clear conscience, but you know that nature does not work on fiction. Nature is not working arithmetic. The carbon in the tree, even if you can say you secured it, is not going to be there forever. And then the one you are emitting is not the same quality of carbon that the one that the tree is using in photosynthesis. So all this kind of the debates, geoengineering. Now you say, okay, we can cool the planet by whitening the clouds and reflecting most of the radiation back into space. Or we can genetically engineer trees to have a higher capacity to absorb carbon. Or we could capture and store the pollution from a factory. But when you capture and store or utilize, where are you going to store the carbon? And for how long would you store it? There's nothing that a human being will construct that will last forever. True. Whatever we can make has a terminal point, maybe 1 million years, if you really want to be generous. So it means that it is not durable, neither is it desirable. So it's a whole lot of, these are just some of the false solutions that we're seeing around, being bandied around. And that is what we're going to see the next conference of parties, COP29, more of the consolidation of the false solutions. And so more of putting the earth on the planet or on the pathways of destruction.
Thank you very, very much. I'm sure our other guests will agree that has been a lot to digest. I want to appreciate you for your time, but I don't think it will be right if our guests, if there are, I don't know, something burning within them that they want to ask or they want to share. This will be the best. This will be the time.
I'm good. Very well informed now on the specific issues and the falsified solutions that are being put out there and how we can tackle these issues as youths and checkmate them.
Listen, I'm sure you have something.
Yeah, I can see it. I can see it.
So I think he said some things about it, but so actionable steps the youth can take. Like you said, everything we've done previously, it's like these people can just come out of. It's like you go meet them here, they're coming out of there. So it's like other than, let's say, protest, and like you said, with the elders in the conference room, and then the youth themselves joining politics. Are there other steps? Are there other things that we can do to make these people feel it, to make them know that what you're doing is wrong? Like, okay, we actually want justice. We want you guys to take steps. We want actionable steps from you guys to make sure that it's like, are there metrics? We set up metrics and then we have to meet these metrics. Are there actionable steps that we can take as youth to demand more, to make sure that we get more done, not just to generate buzz or something on social media, but actually to see the work being done? Are there anything other than protest and then getting into political rooms? Are there other things we can do, sir?
One of the things you can do is to hurt the forces that be where it pains most. And the forces driving a lot of the actions is capital. It's about money. So if you hurt their source of income, for example, campaigning against continual dependence on fossil fuels, if you shut down the oil wells, some people are going to pay attention. If shareholders know their shares is going to plummet, to know that if young people sufficiently show that those people are profiting from their misery, or that your future is being traded, they may change. So that's one thing. It's not an easy thing to do, but it's one thing that could guide action. But I think one of the biggest things that young people can do, and indeed everyone, is, apart from just questioning concepts, is to try to change people's imagination. The world is run by imagination. When people imagine a thing, they get to do it. Some of the false solutions we're having today, some of the industrial creative things that have been done, they came from fiction, from science fiction, from novels. When people believe that something is possible, they're going to pursue it. And I believe that young people are creative enough to change the mindset of people to understand that not everything that is technological, that is positive. Nowadays when people hear that something is scientific, they believe that technology can fix the climate crisis. So we hear about techno fixes. Yeah, they can use technology to solve, but it's not all technology that you have to support. For example, technology gave the world the atomic bomb, but nobody explodes atomic bomb everywhere. When you find there's conflict, just drop one atomic bomb there. No, because you know that would be destructive. The same thing with many of the technical solutions for climate change. They are not ready. We have to go back. So young people have to show a different mindset that we have to go back to nature. We have to learn from nature. Understand that we are not the only beings on planet Earth. We are sharing this planet with so many other beings. In fact, human beings are just a tiny bit of the population. When I say population, I use that word in a way just because I don't have a better word. In terms of biomass on Earth, human beings 0.01%. And so we are so tiny, but we tend to think that everything is around humans. So if we care about other beings, we behave differently, we do things differently, and it's going to be better off for us. Like if we have healthier soil, more carbon will go into the soil. Healthier ocean will absorb more carbon and cool the planet, and we're all better off for it. But when we trash everything, we're creating more problems. So imagination is very important, and cultivating a new ways of looking at things around us is critically important. Politics cannot be ignored. Young people have to fight to be on the table all the time. And when you get to the table, put your foot on the door, open the door, take control of the whole room, and let the older people retire and sit on their rocking chairs.
Thank you very, very much. Do you have any other? Okay.
So, the United States, the United Kingdom, or the biggest, the Western world. With history, we know it's like those countries contribute more to, let's say, carbon, or like to reducing carbon, to depleting the ozone layers, to the climate problems, compared to like Africa and other underdeveloped part of the world. What has been done over time to hold these guys accountable? Are there any initiatives to make sure when it comes to like contributing towards climate justice, to make sure they are doing more?
This you've asked exactly what the challenge is, yes. And this is what most campaigns, those who are coming from environmental justice, have been making this demand, that the polluters must be held accountable. That's the sense of the whole, the organizing and thinking and demanding. I will need to see more of that. Yeah. That's why we have networks and federations and alliances around the world, both in the global north and the global south. People have the people are coming together to stand and say people, not profit, planet, not profit. That is the whole idea. Because colonization brought slavery, colonialism created a lot of crisis for us, because that meant some areas are meant for exploitation while others are meant for enjoyment. So you get the raw materials, you sell somewhere and stop productivity in this area, then bring back the things to make more money. And today the world is still being colonized by big corporations ruling the world in terms of everybody knows that warfare doesn't make sense. But people are making profit from making the weapons. People are going to work every day making bullets and bombs. And so people know what is necessary, but because of the control and the power, they don't want to give up. This is why the whole political system in the world has to change. And people have to say, no, enough is enough of this exploitation. We need to go against neo-colonialism. That's why we campaign against green colonialism. But we talk about energy transition, but the transition is still in a way that is negative. Some communities in Africa, some minerals are being extracted in a very unregulated manner, very destructive manner, to produce green energy. And so the fact that the energy is green doesn't mean that it's good. We need to transit from destructive, exploitative system to one that works with harmony with nature, that also works in alignment with the best interests of humans.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, if you just have one final thing to cap off the discussion, maybe advice or something, anything.
Yeah. Well, I would say, especially to young people, don't give up. The road is long and rough, but the more you become more resolute, the more you insist on what is right, the more you're going to be strengthened in the face of all the challenges. It's going to be very challenging days ahead because people don't easily change their habits. Some people need to be inconvenienced. Some people need to just forego certain things. So we need to redefine what is the fight for the good life, and then define what that good life is. If humans agree globally what a good life is, and that it's desirable to live the good life, I believe that this will build a better world for everybody and for every being. I'll leave it there.
Wow, you have heard it. Don't give up. Redefine what is important for you. As youth, we've been told that we must fight for the rights of the planet and the earth. But then we would go back and ask ourselves, how do we bridge the gap? We've heard it. We've heard from the older generation and from the Gen Zs. Fortunately, I'm not a Gen Z, so I would also take the message back to the millennials and let them know that we all have a lot of work to do. I want to say a very big thank you for being part of today's episode of our series, Debunking Climate Myths. And we want to let you know that you can follow us on all our social media handles on www.healthofmother-earth-foundation. That's our website, homef.org. And then you can follow us on our social media handles at EchoHomef on Twitter, that's X, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And thank you to Nemobasi, the Executive Director of HOMEF, for being a part of today's episode. Oluwatomisin Emmanuel, it's a pleasure having you on today's episode. And to Praise Edori, thank you for being part of it. I am Kome Ojamo.
And I'm Ogunubasi.